If you recently bought a truck or are thinking about buying one, you need to hear this. These aren't old abused work trucks with 200,000 miles. These are pickups that are failing almost immediately after purchase, some before the first oil change. Consumer Reports analyzed owner data, repair records, and early reliability complaints, and what they found is deeply concerning. 6 pickup trucks are showing serious problems right out of the gate, leaving owners frustrated, stuck with repair bills, and wondering how things went so wrong so fast. Let's start with the Nissan Titan, a full-size truck that was supposed to compete with the big names, but instead fell apart far too quickly. Consumer Reports flags the Titan for early transmission issues and electrical failures that show up well under 30,000 miles. Owners report rough shifting, warning lights that won't turn off, and sudden power loss that leaves the truck undrivable. Many buyers were shocked because this wasn't a high-mileage problem. It happened while the truck still smelled new. Even more telling, Nissan quietly exited the Titan market altogether, a move that Consumer Reports experts say speaks volumes about long-term confidence in the platform. Resale values have collapsed within just 2 years, leaving owners underwater on loans for a truck that's already earning a bad reputation. Next up is the Nissan Frontier, a truck that once had a rock-solid reputation for durability. According to Consumer Reports, newer Frontier models are actually scoring worse than older generations, and that's raising serious red flags. Early drivetrain issues, steering problems, and odd vibrations are being reported far too soon. Consumer Reports points to build quality concerns that simply weren't present in previous versions. Buyers who upgraded expecting a more refined, more reliable truck are now regretting the decision, saying the newer Frontier feels rushed, unpolished, and far less dependable than the one they replaced. Then there's the Jeep Gladiator, a truck that looks unstoppable on the outside but tells a very different story once you own it. Consumer Reports highlights early suspension and steering failures that undermine confidence almost immediately. Electrical glitches are another major concern, with owners reporting malfunctioning dashboards, warning systems that fail, and electronics that stop working without warning. Consumer Reports warns that off-road capability does not equal reliability, and the Gladiator is the perfect example. Owner complaints are flooding online forums, with many saying their truck spends more time at the dealer than on the trail. The Hyundai Santa Cruz comes next, and Consumer Reports raises a question many buyers are now asking themselves: is this really a truck at all? While the Santa Cruz was marketed as a fresh, innovative pickup, Consumer Reports questions its long-term durability almost immediately. Transmission concerns are showing up right after purchase, including rough shifts and hesitation that make daily driving stressful. Many owners say they feel misled by the truck branding, expecting toughness that simply isn't there. To make matters worse, depreciation hits hard and fast, shocking buyers who assumed Hyundai's warranty would protect their investment. Then we move to the Honda Ridgeline, a truck praised for comfort but increasingly criticized for what happens when things go wrong. Consumer Reports shows declining reliability scores compared to earlier models, especially in key systems. Early AWD failures and infotainment breakdowns are being reported while the trucks are still relatively new. Once the warranty expires, repair costs can hit hard, and owners are discovering that comfort doesn't mean cheap fixes. Loyal Honda buyers, many of whom expected bulletproof reliability, are now openly expressing disappointment and frustration. Finally, the most expensive and arguably the most shocking entry on the list is the Rivian R1T, a $70,000 electric pickup that Consumer Reports says is plagued by early reliability red flags. Software failures are a major issue, with some trucks becoming completely undrivable due to system crashes or update problems. Build quality issues are being reported right off the lot, including misaligned panels, faulty sensors, and unfinished details that don't belong on a vehicle at this price. Early adopters who believed they were buying the future of trucking now feel betrayed, stuck with a high-tech truck that can fail without warning and leave them stranded. Consumer Reports says the common thread among all 6 of these pickups is not abuse, neglect, or extreme use. It's early failure. These trucks are breaking before owners even have a chance to enjoy them, and that raises serious questions about quality control, rushed development, and whether buyers are unknowingly becoming beta testers. The data shows a growing gap between marketing promises and real-world ownership, and for many truck buyers, the excitement of driving off the lot is being replaced far too quickly with frustration, regret, and repair appointments. disappointments. Consumer Reports warns that this pattern of early failure isn't random, and it isn't limited to one type of buyer or driving style. Many of the complaints come from everyday owners who use their trucks for normal commuting, light hauling, and weekend errands. These aren't extreme off-road builds or heavily modified vehicles. What's alarming is how quickly these issues appear, sometimes within weeks of ownership, which suggests deeper problems in design, software integration, and manufacturing quality that simply aren't being caught before these trucks reach dealership lots. Another major concern Consumer Reports highlights is how dealerships are struggling to keep up with repairs. Parts shortages, long diagnostic times, and repeated visits for the same issue are leaving owners without their trucks for weeks at a time. Some Titan and Gladiator owners report bringing their trucks in multiple times for the same warning lights or drivability issues, only to be told that the problem is normal or that a software update might fix it later. For many buyers, that's not what they expected after spending tens of thousands of dollars on a brand new pickup. Consumer Reports also points out how early reliability problems can quietly destroy a truck's long-term value. Once a model develops a reputation for breaking down early, resale prices drop fast. We're already seeing this with the Nissan Titan and Hyundai Santa Cruz, where used values are sliding faster than similar competitors. Owners who plan to trade in after a couple of years are now discovering they owe more than their truck is worth, turning what should have been a smart purchase into a financial headache. The Rivian R1T raises a different kind of concern, one that Consumer Reports says could become more common as trucks rely more on software. When a gas truck has a mechanical issue, it might still limp home, but when software fails, the truck can simply shut down. Owners have reported waking up to vehicles that won't start, won't unlock, or won't recognize the key, all because of software glitches. Consumer Reports warns that while over-the-air updates sound convenient, they also introduce new risks that buyers may not fully understand yet. For traditional buyers, the Honda Ridgeline and Nissan Frontier cases are especially unsettling. These are brands many people trusted for years, sometimes decades. Consumer Reports notes that when long-established reputations start to crack, it often means internal changes, new suppliers, cost-cutting measures, or rushed redesigns that can have unintended consequences. Buyers who assumed they were making a safe choice are now questioning whether brand loyalty still means anything in today's truck market. What makes this report even more troubling is how quiet some manufacturers have been. Consumer Reports points out that instead of issuing clear explanations or recalls, many brands rely on technical service bulletins or software patches that don't fully solve the underlying issue. Owners are left doing their own research, sharing experiences online, and warning each other after the fact. By the time a problem becomes widely known, thousands of buyers may already be affected. Consumer Reports stresses that this doesn't mean all pickup trucks are bad, but it does mean buyers need to be more cautious than ever. Early ownership data is becoming just as important as long-term reliability, especially as trucks become more complex. Features meant to improve comfort, efficiency, and technology are also creating new failure points that weren't an issue just a few years ago, and these 6 trucks are proof of how quickly things can go wrong when something isn't fully sorted out. And this is where the real question starts to form, because if brand new pickups are failing this early, what does that say about the future of truck ownership? Are buyers paying more than ever to take on more risk than ever? Consumer Reports suggests that unless manufacturers slow down, focus on quality, and stop using customers as test subjects, we could see even more trucks added to lists like this in the near future, leaving buyers to wonder which models are truly safe to trust when the honeymoon period ends and real ownership begins. Consumer Reports goes even deeper by pointing out that many of these early failures aren't just inconveniences, they're confidence killers. When a truck breaks down shortly after purchase, owners don't just lose time, they lose trust. Several Gladiator and Titan owners told Consumer Reports that even after repairs, they no longer feel comfortable taking their trucks on long trips or relying on them for work. That lingering doubt turns every warning light, every strange noise into a source of anxiety, and that's something no brand new vehicle should create. Another issue Consumer Reports emphasizes is how modern trucks are being pushed to do too much at once. Manufacturers are cramming in more tech, more screens, more driver aids, and more complex drivetrains, all while trying to cut costs and speed up production. The result, according to the data, is systems that don't always communicate properly with each other. This is especially evident in the Rivian R1T and Hyundai Santa Cruz, where software and transmission behavior can feel unpredictable. Owners describe trucks that drive perfectly one day and act completely completely different the next. Consumer Reports also highlights a growing gap between test drive impressions and real-world ownership. On a short drive, many of these trucks feel smooth, quiet, and impressive, but problems start appearing after a few thousand miles, once components heat cycle, software updates roll out, and real-world conditions expose weaknesses. Buyers who relied on glowing launch reviews are now realizing that long-term data tells a very different story, and by the time that data is available, the purchase has already been made. Warranty coverage, which many buyers assume will protect them, isn't always the safety net they expect. Consumer Reports notes that repeated visits for the same issue can still fall under normal operation in the eyes of some dealerships. Owners of the Honda Ridgeline and Nissan Frontier report being told that vibrations, noises, or intermittent failures couldn't be replicated, even though they happen regularly in daily use. That leaves buyers stuck paying out of pocket later or living with unresolved problems. One of the most troubling trends Consumer Reports points out is how quickly online owner communities are filling with regret stories. Forums, social media groups, and complaint boards are packed with posts from owners who say they wish they had waited, researched more, or chosen a different model. These aren't isolated cases. Consumer Reports says when patterns like this emerge across thousands of owners, it's a strong signal that the issue goes beyond individual bad luck. The financial impact keeps piling up the longer these trucks stay in the shop. Missed work, rental cars, insurance claims, and depreciation all add up. Consumer Reports explains that even if repairs are covered under warranty, the hidden costs are not. For people who depend on their trucks daily, downtime can be just as damaging as a repair bill, and that reality is hitting many owners far sooner than they ever expected. What makes this situation even more unsettling is that many of these trucks were marketed as lifestyle upgrades, vehicles meant to simplify life, enable adventure, and offer peace of mind. Instead, Consumer Reports says they're becoming sources of stress. The promise of rugged reliability is clashing hard with the reality of early failures, and buyers are left questioning whether the industry has lost sight of what truck owners actually need. And as Consumer Reports continues to collect data, the picture is becoming clearer because these early warning signs rarely stay isolated. Models that struggle in their first years often carry those issues forward, sometimes for an entire generation. That means today's buyers may be dealing with problems that won't fully surface until it's too late to avoid them, raising serious concerns about how many more owners could be affected before meaningful changes are made. Consumer Reports also draws attention to how quickly excitement can turn into regret when reality sets in. Many buyers describe the first few weeks as a honeymoon period, followed by the slow realization that something isn't right. Small glitches start appearing, warning lights flash briefly and disappear, systems reset themselves, and dealerships dismiss concerns as minor. But Consumer Reports explains that these early signs often point to larger problems developing beneath the surface, problems that tend to grow more expensive and more frequent over time. Another alarming detail in the report is how inconsistent the ownership experience can be. Two people can buy the same truck, built in the same year, and have completely different outcomes. Consumer Reports says this points to uneven quality control, where some vehicles leave the factory solid while others are already compromised. This inconsistency is especially noticeable with the Jeep Gladiator and Rivian R1T, where one owner may report a flawless experience while another faces repeated failures almost immediately. Consumer Reports also highlights how marketing plays a powerful role in masking early issues. Bold claims about toughness, innovation, and reliability can overshadow warning signs buried in fine print or early reliability charts. Trucks like the Hyundai Santa Cruz and Nissan Frontier were promoted as smart, modern choices, but Consumer Reports data shows that image doesn't always match reality. Buyers trusted the brand story, only to discover later that the product itself hadn't fully lived up to the promise. The report also raises concerns about how fast model updates are being rolled out. Shorter redesign cycles mean less time for real-world testing, and Consumer Reports suggest that some of these trucks hit the market before all the bugs were worked out. Software-heavy vehicles like the Rivian R1T are particularly vulnerable to this, where fixes are promised later instead of being resolved before delivery. For buyers, that means paying full price to live with unfinished products. Consumer Reports doesn't ignore the emotional side of ownership either. Many owners say the disappointment hits hardest because a truck is often the second largest purchase they'll ever make. It's not just transportation, it's tied to identity, work, and lifestyle. When that investment starts failing early early, it creates frustration, embarrassment, and even resentment toward the brand. Some owners say they feel trapped, unable to sell without taking a major loss. Another issue the report emphasizes is how early failures can snowball into long-term distrust. Once a truck has multiple repairs on its record, even unrelated issues feel more serious. Owners begin listening for every noise, watching every gauge, and second-guessing every trip. Consumer Reports explains that this constant vigilance drains enjoyment and turns what should be a reliable tool into a constant worry. As more data comes in, Consumer Reports warns that these 6 trucks may only be the beginning. Early reliability trends often predict future problems, and unless manufacturers step in with meaningful fixes, the list could grow. Buyers who ignore these warnings risk becoming part of the next wave of regret stories, discovering too late that the problems they dismissed as rare or overblown were actually part of a much larger pattern developing across the truck market. And that's why this report matters so much, because it challenges the assumption that new automatically means better. Consumer Reports is sending a clear message that in today's market, being cautious may matter more than being early, and that patience, research, and attention to real owner data could be the difference between years of dependable ownership and a truck that starts failing almost as soon as you drive it home. Consumer Reports also points out that one of the most dangerous assumptions buyers make is believing that early problems will simply be fixed later. The data shows that trucks with multiple issues in their first year are far more likely to continue having problems down the road. What starts as a software glitch or minor drivability complaint often turns into repeated dealer visits, escalating repairs, and a growing sense that the truck was never truly sorted out from the beginning. Another detail that stands out in the report is how manufacturer responses differ once problems surface. Some brands acknowledge issues quietly, rolling out updates without public explanation, while others downplay owner complaints altogether. Consumer Reports says this lack of transparency leaves buyers guessing whether their truck is affected or whether a failure is just a matter of time. For many owners, especially those with the Nissan Titan and Honda Ridgeline, the silence is almost as frustrating as the breakdowns themselves. The report also sheds light on how early reliability issues impact insurance and ownership costs in unexpected ways. Trucks with frequent electronic or drivetrain failures can be flagged as higher risk, which in some cases leads to increased insurance premiums. Consumer Reports notes that owners rarely anticipate these secondary costs, yet they add to the overall burden of owning a truck that doesn't live up to expectations. Consumer Reports emphasizes that these problems don't just affect individual owners, they ripple across the entire market. When certain models develop bad reputations, it drags down confidence in similar vehicles and even entire brands. Buyers become more hesitant, dealers struggle to move inventory, and incentives increase as manufacturers try to compensate. That cycle can be seen already with the Titan's exit and the heavy discounting starting to appear on some of these models. The psychological impact is another layer many people overlook. Consumer Reports includes owner feedback describing a constant feeling of unease, especially for those who rely on their truck for work or family travel. The fear of being stranded, missing a job, or facing an unexpected repair creates stress that lingers long after the initial issue is supposedly resolved. A truck is meant to provide security, not uncertainty, and for many owners on this list, that promise has been broken early. Consumer Reports also warns against assuming that premium pricing guarantees premium reliability. The Rivian R1T is a prime example, showing that cutting-edge technology and high costs don't automatically translate to dependability. In fact, the report suggests that newer, more complex vehicles may carry even higher risks, especially when companies are still refining their production and support networks. As this report continues to circulate, Consumer Reports expects more owners to come forward with similar stories. Early reliability data often encourages people to speak up, revealing patterns that were previously dismissed as isolated cases. That growing chorus of voices strengthens the warning and makes it harder to ignore what's happening beneath the surface of these so-called new and improved trucks. And with all of this in mind, Consumer Reports leaves buyers with a sobering reality. The moment you drive off the lot is no longer the finish line. It's the beginning of a test that some trucks are already failing far sooner than anyone expected, forcing owners to confront the uncomfortable truth that not every new pickup is ready for the real world, no matter how strong the marketing or how impressive the spec sheet may look. Consumer Reports also makes it clear that many buyers only realize the seriousness of these problems after the return window has long closed. By the time patterns emerge, multiple warning lights, repeated software resets, unexplained noises, the option to walk away is gone. Owners are locked into long-term loans on trucks that are already developing a track record of unreliability, and Consumer Reports says this is one of the most common sources of regret shared in owner surveys. Another layer the report highlights is how early failures can strain relationships between buyers and dealerships. When problems appear quickly, owners expect fast solutions. Instead, many report being told that fixes are on back order or that engineers are still working on it. Consumer Reports notes that this is especially common with newer platforms like the Rivian R1T, where service infrastructure is still catching up to the number of vehicles on the road. The result is frustration on both sides, with owners feeling ignored and dealers overwhelmed. Consumer Reports also examines how early reliability issues can quietly change how people use their trucks. Some owners admit they stop towing, hauling, or taking long trips out of fear of triggering another failure. A truck that was bought for capability ends up being treated like a fragile commuter vehicle. Over time, that disconnect between expectation and reality becomes impossible to ignore, and Consumer Reports says it's one of the strongest indicators of overall dissatisfaction. There's also the issue of trust in updates and recalls. Consumer Reports explains that when fixes arrive slowly or don't fully resolve the issue, owners lose faith in future promises. Software patches that introduce new bugs or repairs that temporarily mask symptoms without addressing the root cause only deepen skepticism. For many Gladiator and Santa Cruz owners, each fix becomes something to brace for rather than look forward to. The report further warns that early failures can have long-term legal and financial consequences. Lemon law cases often hinge on problems appearing early in ownership, and Consumer Reports notes a rise in complaints from owners exploring that route. However, the process is time-consuming and stressful, and not every case qualifies, leaving many owners stuck even when problems persist.